Intelligent life does exist, only it's not out there, it's in here. Let's talk about Tron Ares.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Eye of the Storm podcast. Today, we're here to discuss Tron Ares. But before we get into that, Daniel, do you want to give the people a movie recommendation?
So this week I watched Mr. Jones, which is a 2019 historical movie, which is largely a true story about a Welsh journalist who in 1933 went to Russia to interview Stalin. While he's in Moscow, he experiences the early Soviet Union, just a little over a decade since the revolution. One of his motivations is that he's like an economic analyst, and he just interviewed Hitler just before he came into power. And he's convinced that Germany is the big enemy and that Britain and the Soviet Union have to be allies against Germany. And so he's been studying Soviet economic data and it doesn't make sense. And he wants to talk to Stalin. He wants to go to the USSR to find out what's going on. As he does so, he stumbles into Ukraine, which is undergoing the terror famine of 1933, which is where Ukrainians were starved to death by the Soviet government. All the food got exported and there was nothing left for the local population and millions died. And this journalist who kind of sort of believes in communism or socialism, and a lot of the minor characters in the story are true believers in communism who have gone to Russia to help the revolution succeed. And they basically learn about what is going on. And this is being kept secret, right? And he tries to make this public and nobody will believe him. And other journalists kind of denounce him so that they keep access to the Soviet government, which is their livelihood and all of that. And the movie is very, very much about what happens when your ideas turn out to be lies, where a whole bunch of characters in this are true believers in communism. And over the course of the events of the movie, they realize what is actually going on, about how the revolution has not delivered what it has promised and how they deal with it. And different characters deal with this in different ways. And it's about principle and it's about choosing your principles over success and stuff like this, right? And it takes a whole bunch of liberties with the historical events, but the big picture of it and how it portrays the famine is quite close. It's an effective look into that event, which has not been discussed a lot in movies. There's a few movies about those events, but not many. And this is a decent one. It's mostly about this idea of what happens when your ideals are hollow and the people who are supposed to be champions of your ideals are nothing of the sort. And they've let you down, and what do you do now? On that level, it's a quite good movie. It's a quite good story. It's well acted. It's well written. As long as you don't expect like a richly detailed historical story where you will learn a lot about that time. It's a quite good story. And it's a lot more human focused than that. And on that level, it's quite good.
It's a shame that the historical side of it isn't, as accurate or as strong as, you say the rest of the movie is. Just because it just seems like there's like so many fascinating small stories in and around the World War and like that period, like, before and after and stuff like that, of like, people that were doing interesting things and like with the interesting stories. And this just kind of seems like another one of them, and definitely piqued my interest.
And I absolutely do think that the real story would have been better, because this is a real guy who has not been really talked about much. This is a real Welsh journalist who really went to the USSR and really uncovered the Holodomor. I don't think you need to embellish very much to make the story interesting, because it already is interesting. But that doesn't mean the movie is bad. Like, I learned nothing about that event or about Russia or about Ukraine or anything like that I didn't already know, which was a little bit unsatisfying. But if you know nothing about that, this is a halfway decent introduction. And if you're just interested in the human story, this is also worth your time, I think.
Cool. Mine's a little bit more relaxed and a little bit less serious. But it is next Friday. Next Friday is the sequel to the original movie Friday. And it kind of like follows on from Craig's story in the first movie. It's essentially just like a bit of a like slice of life comedy type of movie where you're just kind of like going on from like one funny thing to another. Some of it's like quite outlandish. Some of it's a little bit like, kind of like raunchy, with like some of it's not raunchy. I wouldn't say raunchy, but kind of like pushes the boundaries a little bit on that front in terms of like some of the jokes that it makes. The thing that carries it is, the guy's uncle's won the lottery and has moved into a nice neighborhood, but he has forgot to pay his taxes. So like they're in a situation where they just need to get extra cash for whatever reason. So it's just comfy. It's one of those home comforts.
Moving on to the main attraction, Tron Ares. So just to briefly summarize, Tron Ares is the third movie in the Tron series, which picks up 15 years after the events of Tron Legacy. As established in the previous Tron movies, there are two corporations who are trying to win the AI race, essentially using the infrastructure and the kind of basic ideas that were explored in the first two Tron movies. Much of the story follows the CEO of ENCOM, which is the good guy corporation, who is trying to recover a piece of code from Flynn, the original programmer from the first Tron movie, that makes AI constructs in the physical world permanent. Right? So the technology exists where the programs that exist in the virtual space can be made physical, but they can only be made physical for 29 minutes. And the evil corporation is trying to sell weapons and artificial AI soldiers, but that only works if they can make these things permanent. And so the race is on to find this code. And the AI that is sent to track down the good guy CEO reads her emails in order to find her, falls in love with her, begins stalking her, and then defects to her side. But in order to make that work, she needs to find the permanence code so that she can make him permanent so that he can defect to her side, and then they fight the bad guys. So what did we think of Tron Ares?
It's a shame that it was under Disney, unfortunately, because I feel like the concept and the ideas behind it are great. They're very interesting. Really liked the whole like artificial intelligence and the race for AI and like the race for permanence and, you know, actually going into the cyber world as well. And actually like going into the grid. I think it's what it's called. I think there's a lot of like really cool elements. Like for me, I really dug the visuals in this. The whole like suit, like the bikes, the 3D printing of all these AI like ships and vehicles and people and stuff like that. I thought they were all like pretty cool and like very visually pleasing. But the story was just left wanting. Like it kind of like scratched the surface of so many different things and didn't really dive deep into anything at all. So many question marks and so many like questions or like so many like ideas and themes about like, you know, the whole like element of AI stepping into the real world, for example, and you know their reaction to it, how sort of that would like change their programming, change their understanding of the real world and stuff like that. Just didn't seem like it was like explored as deeply as it could have been if it was, you know, handled by different filmmakers, different studio. You could explore that a little bit further and you could like add a lot more complexity to the story, but everything was like super surface level. Everything was like very safe. It was very good guy versus bad guy. There just wasn't really any depth in the story or any of the characters that we had. And it was almost like checkboxing. It was like checkboxing motivations, checkboxing a sad backstory for the hero character that we have in this, or the protagonist that we have in this. Checkboxing love interest between like the AI and Eve Kim in this particular movie. I don't know. It just felt like we were just kind of ticking checkboxes as opposed to having a central idea that we wanted to explore, or like a theme or some type of analysis that, you know, they wanted to do, especially in the world where we're advancing so quickly with AI across the world, across, you know, personal life, business life, etc. We're advancing so quickly. It missed the opportunity to say something, which is a shame.
I think one of the differences between us is that I've seen the other Tron movies and you've not, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm by no means a Tron fan. I saw the other movies once over the past week before seeing this, so that I had some kind of hope of understanding what was going on. For that reason, I was not at all impressed by the visuals, because the visuals of the other movies were just so much more interesting and creative, and that will be one of my big criticisms of this movie. But just by itself, this movie just does everything wrong. Like, the main characters have no personalities; they have the charisma of a sack of potatoes. Actually, I would like a sack of potatoes more, because that has a useful purpose, and I can like look forward to what I might do with those potatoes. They just have no charisma. They have no goals beyond the most basic. They have no character arcs. They have no challenges to overcome. They have no dilemmas. They never make choices in any real way. They basically have two tricks. Like, and one of the big ones is these light beams, like this light trail that the vehicles leave, which is kind of solid and is there for a couple of seconds, right? And you can do stuff like encircling other people or create barriers and whatever. And that was something that was in the first movie in 1982. And it was more fun there, because there they did stuff with that idea. And here they really didn't. And they kept just repeating the same visual over and over, a dozen times at least. They just never go beyond the most basic application of it. They never escalate it. They never add wrinkles to it. It's absolutely astonishing that somebody would make a $200 million movie that looks this bad and is this uninteresting and is this unfun. End of review.
I have to disagree, man, on the visuals. And again, this is a disagreement coming from someone that hadn't seen the original movie. I don't think the visuals are that bad. Like, I can agree with you that they probably don't progress throughout the movie, but I like the light beams, man. I really like the light beams. I thought they were like super cool. I thought it was like quite interesting. They used it in some kind of like interesting ways when they were taking out the aircrafts that were like going after them and stuff. I really like the motorcycles. I like the different vehicles that they had, like the motorcycles, the like airship and stuff like that. I was like really digging the aesthetic of it. But again, this is coming from someone that's only seen this particular movie. But I kind of personally feel like even if I had seen the first movie, I still feel like this is like nice to look at still, I would say.
I do think I like the aesthetic, and I recommend you watch Tron Legacy, because that one is 15 years old and it did all the same stuff, but more interestingly. And it also spends more time with these constructs and with these programs and all of that. And I agree that the costumes look cool and like the vehicles look cool. But I think the only thing that's new is these gliders that they use towards the end. Everything else is from one of the previous two movies. I'm even lost for words, right? Like it's just so bereft of creativity. And now, so like there's this one scene, for instance, where the fighter jet, like they scramble the fighter jets because the evil programs are attacking, and two gliders, I think, kind of wedge in one of the jets, and they kind of like these trails kind of close in on it and cut off its wings and all of that, right? And I agree that it kind of looks cool, but it's like the most obvious way, like the most obvious thing you could do with this, right? This is like literally a superhero movie where everybody punches and shoots energy balls and nothing else. It's not so much that it looks bad, it's that it's obvious and it's the same thing over and over, is my problem.
One part that they definitely missed a trick on was the whole hacking. And you have like the red agents versus the blue agents. I don't know. It seemed like the blue side were quite quite useless and kind of like overrun by the red side quite quickly. But I don't know. It would have been great to have seen that play out a little bit more tactically, like espionage type thing. And like, yeah, it was there with like the whole like flying thing and stuff like that. But it just wasn't as creative as it could have been. They could have spent longer on it as well, and it could have like allowed us to spend a little bit more time in, you know, the digital world. And that probably would have helped Ares' character a little bit in terms of like really like fleshing him out a little bit and like, you know, really fleshing out like the whole subtle change that he has, or like, you know, the change in programming. Something similar to that movie that we watched with Christian Bale where they're doing like the gun dance.
Equilibrium.
Something a little bit closer to like how they handled his character and his transition and how like subtle it was from, you know, being deprogrammed from what he knew. I feel like would have benefited Ares in this particular movie. But for sure, that whole hacking scene, you could have pulled a little bit more juice out of that food.
And before we go into Ares, just one more comment about the creativity. I think the one kind of cool shot is when the bikes leave the trail at an angle, so it kind of acts like a ramp when I think the police car or a car that's following it kind of drives onto it, and the car kind of flips into the air because it's like at an angle. That was the one time where I said, okay, somebody had an idea here. Just wanted to put that on the record. Another thing that I think is really a problem is that the entire concept of the movie. So if you've not seen the previous movies, the whole plot of the previous movies was that there is an evil AI so the idea is basically that programmers create virtual realities, right? They create programs, and it turns out that these programs become intelligent and they form societies. And those societies then instantly turn into dictatorships, where one program tries to subjugate all the other programs. In the second movie, the evil program tries to get into the real world because there's like a way for the humans, for the users to escape to the real world. And the bad guy program is trying to figure out a way for programs to do the same. This is a kind of a continuation of this, where this has now been figured out, and now programs can be brought into the physical world for a time. You would think that this is like a logical extension of what came before, and this is like an expansion of what came before. But I think it's really impoverishing the entire thing because we spent no time in the virtual world. Like one of the coolest sequences is when Dillinger is hacking ENCOM, and we're cutting back and forth between the actual hacking and the virtual representation where the programmers fight each other. That was the one scene where I said, okay, this is kind of cool, where we are kind of taking this hacking idea literally, and we're showing what that's like, because that's one thing that has been kind of limited in the previous movies.
That's the part, like what I was saying, where they could have pushed it a little bit further. On the outside, I think cool, but when we're actually in the virtual world is where I thought, like, because it's funny, because like that's one thing that you do like, and the one thing that I didn't like, but you don't feel like they could have done it in a better way, a little bit more creative way in terms of like the whole like hacking, because it kind of just like really played out as any old like Chewbacca and what's his name and Han Solo just like breaking into the Empire's like base or whatever like that. There wasn't anything like really creative about it that made it special that they were artificial intelligence as opposed to just like real human beings breaking into a base.
I don't say this was like a great scene or that is really excellent or firing on all cylinders or anything like that. It's more like we've not really seen programs do stuff in the previous movies, like in a way that correlates to programming. We just say, okay, this person who's wearing like a glowing suit is a program, but otherwise they're just a person. It's always kind of been the thing about Tron. In the original program, there's like an accounting program that is being thrown into an arena to fight for the amusement of the other programs. It's just a guy, and the fact that it's an accounting program does not matter at all. So just seeing kind of that correspondence between the real world and the virtual world was kind of neat. That was it, right? And the fight choreography was basic, but okay, like it was kind of what you expect. I think this movie, like one of the things that drags on this movie is we spent no time in the virtual world at all, right? So we don't really explore it. And that's always kind of been the big appeal of going into this virtual world. And that is just not here. And that's on purpose, right? It's supposed to be about the virtual world coming to us. And there they don't do anything either. It's literally just guys in suits, and then they fight. Like there's no difference between them and a Terminator and an alien, and it's all the same. There's nothing specific about it. There's nothing cool about it. Like for instance, why are they making 3 guys? Why are they not making 3,000? And why are they not churning them out as fast as the lasers will print them? It's just 3 guys. It's like Ares, Athena, and 2 henchwomen. That's it. That's the army. And they get different vehicles in different scenes, but they all kind of just shoot lasers and leave light trails. And that's all they do. There's no escalation or development beyond that.
Part of like bringing them into the real world, like part of what annoyed me was the whole like 29 minutes aspect of it. It never really felt consistent at all. Anytime that the AI came into the real world, it just felt like the movie gave them as long as it needed to complete the sequence or the scene that they were essentially involved in, especially like from the location that they were coming in and like having to travel all the way into the city and stuff like that. It's like it'd probably take 29 minutes just getting from like A to B before you even like are able to do anything. It just really bugged me every single time because it was just so convenient on every opportunity. It was just so convenient, and I get it's a movie, but it has to feel like we really have 29 minutes and that we're not just stretching this because the movie needs to stretch the amount of time that they're actually spending in the world. It's all about feeling. When you're adding a gimmick like that to the movie, it's about feeling, and the feeling was just off the whole time.
The way you make that kind of scene work is by saying, okay, you have 3 minutes left, and now in real time we have a 3-minute long scene, and the movie has to convince us that the characters can run out the clock. That's how you make that suspenseful, right? Because then you have to do it in a believable way, and you have to make it real, right? But saying it's 29 minutes is really abstract, like you say, right? It basically means there is a clock going on, right? But anything can happen in 29 minutes, right? And there's no, like you say, there's no real sense of place. The distances don't mean anything to us, right? And everything is happening at the speed of plot, right? Everything is just happening in a way that's convenient to the writer, but not in a way where any real suspense is forming. Absolutely agree. Now that we've trashed the effects and the drama, how about Ares? And Ares and Eve Kim, right? Those are the 2 big main characters here who are supposed to have these big journeys. Any thoughts on them?
Eve was dull as hell, unfortunately. But
can I just say one thing? Have you ever seen this actress in anything?
I don't think I have.
You've seen New Girl, right?
I have seen New Girl.
She was in New Girl. So a couple of seasons in, there's this plot where the slacker friend, what's his name? It's not Schmidt, it's not Winston, it's the other one. So he kind of goes into the park, he befriends this elderly Korean man who seemingly speaks English but never says anything. And because he never says anything, he's a great listener. And like these 2 kind of start a friendship. And then his daughter is played by Greta Lee. And she kind of initially is the perfect girlfriend for him because she's also a slacker, doesn't want anything, that doesn't do anything. And then there's this whole plot about how he thinks she's homeless, and then it turns out she's a tech millionaire who is just retired at 25. Like she sold a company, whatever, and that is why she doesn't work. But anyway, in that show, she is really good because she needs to be a little bit quirky and a little bit weird, and she can do that really well. And here she's supposed to be the protagonist hero, and she just does nothing. It's incredible. It's like just a wooden block, just looking at the camera. It's weird. Like, it's not the weirdest part about this movie. Some people can be good actors, and I have no opinion about her as an actor, right? But just in general, you can be a good actor and you cannot be a great lead. And I think that is what's happening here, where she should just not be a lead, because you need a certain amount of presence and charisma, and people need to want to watch you for 2 hours, and that's just not the case here. Or just to be fair, Jared Leto is just as annoying and just as uninteresting, and it's kind of a problem when both of the main actors are this way.
And you could feel it. You could feel it like very early on in the movie when they were in Alaska or Antarctica or wherever they were retrieving the permanence code. Is you just kind of really felt nothing. And I don't know whether part of her backstory and part of like her sister, like you were meant to feel something if you'd watched the previous movies, and I know you have, so like you might have like a different take on it.
She does not appear in the previous movies.
Are you being serious?
I wish I wasn't, but these are new characters.
I thought her sister like had like some type of role to play in the previous movie, and that we like actually cared about her, and we emphasized what? Oh my god, that makes it so much worse.
This entire thing is just a flashback, and it's just sad backstory.
And that's how they lead with her, like introducing her into the movie. Like you see how like they set her up to fail, because they kind of really lead with this whole thing about like her sister and stuff. So I'm thinking, okay, there's like context that I don't understand. Maybe like, someone cares about a sister, I don't, whatever. But they're following on the thread. But this kind of goes back to what I was saying, is that they're just like checkboxing things, like, oh, we need them to care about the protagonist. Oh, give her a dead sister that she needs to, want to complete this mission for, or something like that. And I'm just like, now I'm like, what the hell? Like, with a protagonist is you kind of like start them off, something unexpected happens and they go on the journey. You don't start off with a dead sister that no one knows and that we're like meant to fake care about, and then really give her no journey at all, or like give her like nothing to work with throughout the whole movie, and think we're going to care about your main character in your story.
Giving somebody a dead relative to motivate them is not nothing new, right? Like, there's lots of characters who start out this way, or who have that as kind of their initial motivation. But in order for a protagonist to be interesting, they need to be on a journey, and they need to want to accomplish a goal that is interesting. And here, she is, as a person, just not interesting to watch at all. She has no charisma at all, no personality at all. And her goal is just to get the MacGuffin. She wants to get this piece of code so that her company can win the AI race, and then so that Ares can be free. Why do I care about any of this? Like, why is this interesting? Why is this emotionally gripping? Why is this satisfying? What's my hook? It's not. It's just pure plot, right? Like, somebody just wrote down this plot without any regards for emotion or humanity. It's really quite baffling.
And then you pair it up with Ares, which I really wanted to like Ares. Like,
who's somehow even worse.
I really wanted to like him. From the visual perspective, he had like the right look. He had the right suit, the long dark hair. He looked like he looked quite tough, like quite badass in his design. But then you kind of like bring them out into the like, I like his whole like deal was just so confusing in terms of like why he would defect the way, or why he would like, malfunction the way that he did because of like raindrops that he saw when he first came out, and like why nothing like that had like deterred him before, why he suddenly cared about his, that one program that was going to be killed if everyone was going to be nuked anyways, and you just came back to life anyways, because I'm sure they were like nuked, and it was said that they were destroyed so many times. So like, why all of a sudden do you care about program life when you know that they're gonna come back anyways?
I think that's a little bit different, where if they get killed in the real world, they reform in the virtual world. So, and they remember what they did in the real world, right? So every time Ares gets killed or anybody else gets killed, they go back into the virtual world. But what like is supposedly the big turning point is that one of the programs disobeys an order during the raid and kind of keeps fighting when they're supposed to be retreating. And for that reason, he's being annihilated. And Ares tries to argue with his creator about this. That is the red line, right? So that is why that is different from just dying.
No, I think I forgot that context. Forgettable movie.
Yeah.
So forgive me for forgetting that. But I'll
Oh,
kind of.
as you were talking, I realized something. This should have been Darth Vader. The bad guy is second in command, who initially is brutal and imposing and overpowering, and then the hero gets through to them on a human level, and that leads them to betray their master, and they die in the process. That's Darth Vader's story, right? Like just based on the original trilogy of Star Wars, and that's our Star Wars comparison for the episode. If there's anybody new listening,
You missed mine earlier. Sorry, you missed mine earlier when I mentioned about Chewbacca and Han Solo. So that's our second.
oh, that's right. Yes. So we're 1-for-1. So that's a tie. If that's what it would have been, if somehow Eve had gotten through to Ares, to his conscience in whatever way that exists, and that got him to question his programming, then he decided to betray his creator. But in order to do that, he needs the permanence code, because otherwise he would just come back to the Dillinger mainframe. That would have been a real story. And so what we needed here was something like this, like some real dilemma or some real decision to make. And since we've done Star Wars, let's do Stargate. In the first episode of Stargate, the heroes turn the second in command of the bad guy by showing that you can stand up to the tyrant and live. There's a line in the pilot that the character says, O'Neill, the main character, says something like, "We can help these people." And then Teal'c, the enforcer, the Ares character, says, "Many have said that. You are the first one I believe." And that is when he betrays his master. At that point, we know this character for about 10 minutes. And it works because we understand his motivation and his frame of mind. And we understand why he would risk everything to do the right thing. Because the show tells us that he has been wanting to do this for a long time. And this is the first time he believes it can actually work. Which just goes to show that there are many different ways to make this work. And Tron Ares does none of them.
That whole sequence of him going into their database and seeing Eve Kim and just randomly falling in love with Eve Kim was just such a baffling wait for.
It's not random. He reads her email, and that's when he realizes he loves her and wants to be with her forever.
Which is very creepy, very very creepy.
That's our hero.
Nice.
And there's like one line where she says, "Oh, this is a bit weird," and then never comes up again.
Yeah.
You could have had a scene where he gets confronted with like. How in Age of Ultron, right? Ultron becomes evil because he spends 2 minutes on the internet and decides that humanity does not deserve to live, which was one of the most relatable villain motivations I've ever seen. Well, what if this had been the opposite? What if he spends 2 minutes on the internet, like he's completely locked down, he only knows what Dillinger Systems has been telling him about humanity and about his targets. He gets sent out into the world to find Eve, right? And to do that, he has access to the internet. That means he has access to the totality of human emotion. Within a minute, he realizes that Dillinger Systems has been lying to him and that he cannot do this. And he has to find a way to defect or to become free. That would already be enough as a character motivation. You should probably develop that afterwards. But that would be enough to kind of get us to understand where he comes from. I did not understand at all why Ares wants to betray Dillinger Systems. At all.
Especially as you're kind of like seeing the first cracks of it after they've done the demo to the government officials and the government army, which outrageous that they would come and see a demo of these AI weapons and AI soldiers being printed and not really think that they should probably shut down the company or seize control of the company or whatever, because those are very dangerous weapons to have just out in the open, out in the wild, and can quickly go wrong as it did in this particular movie. But I don't know if I'm missing something about like the raindrops, because it happened to Athena as well when she got hit with the sprinklers, and it was like the raindrops that changed her programming to want to actually have permanence and want to actually be in the real world as well. And again, I feel like that was like an element of the movie that was underexplored, and like you kind of like hit the nail on the head with it essentially by saying what happens when AI actually develops feelings and starts to understand human emotions and like the decision making that kind of goes behind it and stuff like that. And part of it is being on the internet and being outside of like the Dillinger framework, but also another element of it is being in the outside world and actually experiencing it. But we only kind of like briefly touching it with the raindrops and like the little firefly that flies onto his finger.
Would it have killed them to meet a puppy? or a small child or something, or a sunset, like raindrops existing. Like this is some Hollywood nonsense, right? Like the magic of emotion turns the unfeeling program. I sometimes have this feeling that Hollywood writers are not humans, that they're actually aliens pretending to be humans, and they've never actually met a human. Because sometimes they come up with stories or story beats that are so divorced from everyday humanity that it like the result is kind of baffling. Like I can come like give me 2 minutes and a pen, and I will give you 20 scenarios in which the AI is confronted with overwhelming beauty in the real world that it was never told existed. Like it's not difficult. Maybe like if somebody is really into this movie and really memorize the script and they can maybe quote lines that explain all of this, right? And maybe there is like a logical chain that goes from here to there. I'm just saying it's a lame one. It's not interesting. It's not. It did not grip me. It did not make me feel for anybody. And that is kind of what it's supposed to do. And that is kind of why it's a bad story beat. Because like this looks like if you kind of make like, if you just look at the plot in terms of like a flowchart or a diagram, it kind of makes sense. But it has no humanity and it has no emotion in it. That's why it's bad.
Almost feels like it was written by AI itself, to be honest.
Yeah. Moving on, just one more real big rant I have about the story. Like this whole thing is just a MacGuffin chase and kind of interchangeable action sequences. Just one like we briefly talked about how the virtual worlds are not that interesting. One thing I found really disappointing is how we go to the original 80s mainframe, and it looks kind of cool for a minute because it just looks very different from the modern stuff. And that's it. There's nothing else to it. It says nothing about modern tech versus old tech. And like Flynn specifically is kind of this renegade cowboy programmer who thinks that data should be free and who kind of worked for the big corporation because he had to. And like the plot of the first movie is the company screwing him over for like where he's not getting credit for his work and all of that, right? So he's always kind of been this renegade type of character, and his world that he's created and that he lives in is no different from any other mainframe. There's no thought put into it. It doesn't make a statement other than it looks different. In the 80s were cool, and they have this like first of all, Flynn is like a legendary character to these programs, right? Like they've heard of him. He's basically God, right? It's hard to describe how important he is to the characters and the virtual characters in this world. And then Ares meets him, and they have a conversation about Depeche Mode. And because he says he likes Depeche Mode more than Mozart, Flynn gives him the code. So underwhelming. It's incredible. Like, can you not come up with some interesting philosophical argument about how Flynn kind of brings out like there's many different ways to do this, right? Either Flynn is already at the end of his journey, where he proves to Flynn that he has learned what he needs to learn, or he's in the middle of his journey and Flynn pushes him over the finish line by asking him the right questions and kind of putting him into a situation maybe where he can't fight his way to the goal for the first time, and now he has to talk, and now he has to think. That scene should have been the big payoff for Ares' journey, and it's nothing. It's just some nonsense about Depeche Mode is cool.
And not even just like think, because there's that whole element of AI learning from what's online and what already exists on the web, and when you kind of like remove them from the whole like ENCOM or like their framework and the vast access they have, and you kind of bring them to a little bit more of a downscaled version of the grid. What happens for like to AI when you don't have all the access and you maybe have to like think of something, like produce an answer for the first time by yourself without downloading an information and kind of like regurgitating what already existed online, if you kind of get like my drift on that front.
There's a whole bunch of ways to do this, right? Like one thing is that in the 80s everything was very DIY, right? Like you had to really understand the technology to use it, and today you don't. Today you can't even understand it. Like it's very locked down, it's very black box, it's very, if the programmers at Microsoft don't want you to do something, you can't do it, right? And in the 80s everything was open. Everything was like you had to kind of know how a computer worked to really use it. And that kind of changed over time. But if you go back 40 years all of a sudden, back to this hacker ethos of the 80s and this pioneer ethos, can you not say something about this? Can you not have that play out in the interaction of two programs, one from each world? It's like so underwhelming. None of that of any kind is there. So we do this whole stupid thing, which is a complete waste of time, right? And then we have a big fight, and then the fight is won by supporting characters hacking the Dillinger mainframe or grid off screen, and that's what wins the day. Any opinions?
I'm trying to remember where was Eve again during this?
Ares was fighting Athena, and Eve, if I remember correctly, was trapped in the light prison. And what actually wins the fight is what are they called? AJ and Seth hacking the Dillinger Systems,
I
and they switch
actually
it off.
do you know what's so funny is I wouldn't say I enjoy the side characters in this movie, but I actually like them a lot more than what we got from Eve King and Tron Ares in this. When we were on the Antarctica island, I was like, oh, is the comedic relief side character or just like the quirky side character? And I was like, I don't think I hate him as much as like I normally do hate some of these characters. I was like, oh, he kind of seems fine. And the whole like CTO as well had some actually like funny moments, like when he was trying to go on stage with the cowboy hat and the woman just like takes it off his head before he goes on stage, but he can't react to it. He just has to go like into full like character mode. So I actually quite like the side characters a little bit more than the main characters, but it's very lame that the side characters, like they should play a role in whether you succeed or not towards the end, but they shouldn't play the main role and they shouldn't be the reason why you win, because again, it should be tied to the protagonist. It should be tied to the protagonist's journey and where they've like gone. But when your protagonist doesn't have a story, when your protagonist doesn't really have a journey that they're going on, it then becomes hard to actually tie an ending to a real character arc.
At that point, how would you do it, right? Like, how would you actually win in a way that is satisfying? And I think I would bring this back to Darth Vader, right? Because the way Luke defeats the Emperor is not by fighting him, but by getting through to Vader on a human level, right? And only the son of Anakin Skywalker can do that, right? And that is kind of the whole story, right? That Luke does not win by fighting; he wins by being a nice guy, right? That's what makes him noble. And here is like something like that, where if I had to rewrite the movie, right, like the only thing I can come up with is that Dillinger relies entirely on Ares, and so Eve gets through to Ares on a personal level by making him understand that he's on the wrong side. And when he betrays Dillinger, Dillinger is left with nothing. That would have worked. But that's the only thing I can think of. But what definitely doesn't work is having supporting characters win the fight off screen. I cannot emphasize this enough. I don't know what these people were smoking, but it's incredible. You're right that they should help, right? And I'm reminded of Superman this year, where the entire Daily Planet staff contributes to the solution by working together to get this article published in record time, right? So that the information gets out to the public, and that has consequences for Lex Luthor, right? And you could have done something similar where these people kind of work together to have a contribution. But the person who has to win in the end is Eve and Ares. The conclusion to their journeys has to be the victory. There's more than one way to tell a story, right? But this is just the lamest one, the lamest version, the one that is extra uninteresting. I was already not interested in Eve and Ares, but I just outright threw up my hands in the theater when I saw that they were not even the ones who win the fight.
Yeah,
I feel like we're doing this injustice because it's that bad.
probably like,
But I'm honestly lost for words.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it where the protagonist has nothing. Like the closest feeling I can like feel to it, and the character wasn't even like the character was like one of the main characters, is when Arya Stark kills the Night King in Game of Thrones season 8, as opposed to Jon, where it's like the whole point is Jon's character's like his whole like story had kind of been building and had been around the Night King and the White Walkers, and it kind of really felt like you robbed him of that. You kind of like robbed him of like that final moment, even though it was like the cliche thing to do. Even though it was like what the fans expected. It's like the fans expected it because we built up towards it, but subverting expectations and all that fun stuff. But I actually, do you know what's so funny? I recognize it's bad, but I don't even feel as strongly as you do about it, just because I didn't really care about the main characters. So I don't care that they didn't save the day, because there was just like nothing to them. So it's just be like, oh, they won in the end. Oh, great, like the good guys won. But I didn't care. Like, even if they had saved the day, like you had to have like constructed a better movie. Like this is just like based on how the movie played out and like what we got up until that point. Even if they had won the day, I would have felt empty. I would have felt nothing, because there was nothing about the characters anyways up until that point. You had to have constructed a really good sort of narrative for the characters throughout to then have like that satisfying ending. So that's why I don't feel like I care. Like I didn't even like, I don't think I even like properly processed it, just because I was like, okay, like the good guys won. I expected the good guys to win, and I didn't really like matter that the protagonist wasn't the one that won the day in the end.
This movie seems to believe that a story is just a sequence of events in which there's some fighting and in the end the good guys win. That seems to be the thought process, right? Because everything is just the summary of a video game, right? Like you can imagine like a video game where you play Ares and you have to kind of break free from Dillinger Systems and you have to find the code and then you fight the big bad guy in the end. You know what I mean? Like there's this big showdown in the city and in the end you win the boss fight. That is how video games work. And that's a totally fine medium, right? But it is not like a narrative. Like you said, of course the good guys win in the end, but how they win and what they do to win and what it means for them, that is what's interesting. And the people making this do not understand this. And here's what's weirder. This is not a corporate cash grab. This is somebody's passion project, specifically Jared Leto's passion project. And I can't find the numbers right now, but this movie has been in production for like a decade. This is not like, oh, we have the Tron rights lying around. Can we crap out something that looks pretty and will make enough money? First of all, this is not making enough money. This looks like it will lose something to the tune of $300 million when all is said and done. But this is also not that. They have been working on this story for a long time, and there's like all sorts of ups and downs. And I think that's rights issues. And I've briefly skimmed the history of this. This is not simply let's make a movie because we have an empty slot in our release schedule. Like somebody wanted to make this. And then what they made was something that is not a story. That is just simply a sequence of events and some action sequences that somehow cost $200 million. Dune cost 160 million. I would just like to put that on the record, right? And Dune looks 10 times, 20 times, 50 times better than this. It's just astonishing how inept everything and everybody associated with this is. And I don't even hate it that much, and I don't even care that much about Tron. I think people should go watch the 1982 Tron and rate it as a fun science fiction movie from 40 years ago. And that's kind of it. It's kind of neat. It's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting. But I'm not a Tron fan. I hadn't even seen Tron until a week ago. What I'm offended by and what I'm taking personally is this whole thing about you can just fart out this nonsense and burn $200 million in the process. This should not have cost more than 100 or 80 maybe. Like it's so small. It's basically one type of special effect. It's got a small cast, no big names outside of Jared Leto and Gillian Anderson. I don't know how expensive she is, but like at least she's a big name. Jeff Bridges appears for 8 seconds in the movie each, so he can't have been that expensive. So there's no reason for why this is, and I don't know if this had like reshoots or like script issues or whatever, the usual Disney nonsense. But this is just wrong on every level. Story, character, theme, production, like all of it is incompetent, and it's taking up space. And we could have gotten a different kind, like a better science fiction movie out of this with this money and in this spot in the release schedule. And we couldn't because these people are in charge.
And like I said at the top of this, I really wanted to like it because the idea behind Tron, the concept behind it, is very interesting. Like it's quite fascinating.
The spectacle in this is boring. I tuned out like half an hour in.
I was actually going to do another like Star Wars, like not a Star Wars comparison, but the reason why like things like the lightsabers and other popular items from the Star Wars are effective is because of the characters behind them and the characters that are wielding them. Like the lightsaber's cool because Luke Skywalker is cool holding a lightsaber and doing cool things with it, and like Darth Vader's cool with a lightsaber doing cool things with it. And in here, you have some of the cool suits and you have some of the cool tech and you have some of like the cool lasers that can like build out like 3D print artificial intelligence or like weapons that can be like come to life and like people that can come to life, and there's like the cool things, like there's cool things about it, but you just don't have the cool characters to really like drive home the iconography of the visuals in here.
Can I blow your mind? This movie does two things. It's the light trail and the throwing discs, right? Also, the two cool things in this movie. They're both from the first movie. In the first movie, there were games. So in the first movie, the evil dictator program is making people fight in the arena for the amusement of the other programs. These gladiator fights with the discs is one of the games that they have to play, and racing with these light cycles is the other one. That's where that comes from. And the entire franchise is built on those two things being kind of cool.
You kind of miss a trick when you have, especially when you advance so much in technology over sort of the first movie and the latter movie, and there's just like so many more ideas. Like you could very much plug in this. You could actually plug this into ChatGPT and ask it to think of like other cool like ways that of like how the technology can be used in sort of different sequences in this movie, and you'd probably get a lot better suggestions than just copying what we'd done in the past. You'd at least get one or two to add to the two that you had in this movie. You'd at least get another two that you could add to it. Something that's a little bit more diverse and a little bit more creative, and like, you know, shows actual progression in the universe, as opposed to just doing what we've done before. So it's actually very disappointing to hear. It's honestly, it's actually like disheartening to hear like everything that I actually liked about the movie is actually just lazy stuff that was already there, already in place.
Yeah, and I would recommend you just watch the first one. It's fun, it's interesting, it's quirky, it's creative. Everything you liked in this movie is also in that movie. I've got one more topic, and that is how Tron is not about AI.
Hit me, go on.
So first of all, AI, obviously big topic right now, right? It's being pushed everywhere. It's kind of driving kind of the economy right now, because like the AI race, like whoever can win that will probably make trillions in the coming decades, right? So it is on everybody's mind at work. Pretty much every ad I get is for AI toys, right? Generative AI that makes you lazier, right? Like the selling point of almost all AI is, hey, would you like to be lazier? For one simple subscription, you no longer have to think when writing emails. Wouldn't that be nice? It's everywhere, right? It's on everybody's mind. And I've not seen one movie about AI, not in a way that actually speaks to what AI is about in the real world, what impact it has on our lives, positive and negative. It's all the evil AI will kill us all, right? And that is exactly what this is. Like the AI in this movie is just soldiers that will come to kill you because the evil corporation owns them. Like that has nothing to do with why AI is potentially dangerous. Just as one example, I've heard of publishers, right? Like book publishers that have shut down new submissions because they're being flooded with AI novels that an AI can churn out in a minute. And it's indistinguishable from just somebody's debut novel. And that basically means these publishers cannot operate. And it means that it's basically impossible to get published if you're an unknown author. If you're a known author and they know your style and they know you really write books, then you can still get published. And it's not all publishers, right? But I've heard this a bunch of times now, where that is just a real world impact, right? There's this nebulous idea of what if we all become obsolete, right? And all of that. I'm pretty optimistic about it. I think like in a time where like there's like just a worker shortage in all areas, being able to do work without workers seems like a good idea. But that's kind of like the big picture optimism, right? And there's definitely going to be a lot of problems and a lot of opportunities that come with it. And it will take probably a lifetime to actually sort it all out. And wouldn't it be nice if our movies and our science fiction exploited these ideas in a way that actually informed us and actually guided our thinking and actually had answers, or at least the right questions that are relevant to one of the big upheavals of our time? Wouldn't that be cool? Why is that not the case? Why are no movies talking about this topic in a way that is actually connected to the real issue? And Tron definitely is not. The marketing and a lot of the audience are really eager to pretend that this is about AI because that makes it relevant. And it's just not. It's like it has nothing to do with what ChatGPT is doing in your life, or what automating your job or part of your job, or maybe entry-level jobs, or whatever it might be. Like there's so many. Like one of the big problems of AI is that if you automate all the entry-level jobs, who's going to train people who are starting their careers? We have to completely rethink how we train people, because the jobs we used to give to them are now given to AI, or will be in the next few years. That pulls up the ladder for just about every job. And that means that it will take us a decade or two to figure out how to do that task of preparing talent and teaching people to do the more advanced stuff, because the old model is obsolete. That by itself is not the worst thing, but it's a huge challenge. And a lot of people will be negatively affected by this. And it has zero to do with any depiction of AI in any movie. It pisses me off a little bit, but what annoys me more is how people pretend this is not true. How people pretend that just because this is called AI in the movie, that means it's timely and relevant to our lives and has something to say. It does not. You will not learn anything about AI by watching this movie. You will not even begin to ask the right questions because you've seen this movie. And I don't think the first Tron did either, really. That one is more about what happens if you lose control of your creation. To what extent are you responsible for the consequences of your actions if you didn't intend them and had no way of predicting them? That is kind of more the question that the original Tron asks. And Tron Legacy is kind of similar, where what happens if you inherit that guild, or the consequences of somebody else's actions, right? These are actually interesting topics, but they also have nothing to do with AI. And this movie just outright pretends to be about AI. And a lot of people seem to have bought the marketing, and it annoys me. Can we please be a little bit more critical in our thinking about this?
You're asking too much of Disney. I'm not like one of those people like that bash Disney or anything like that, because I'm a big fan of Disney and some of the work that they do around like different projects. But I just feel like it's not in their wheelhouse to produce that strong a thought provoking movie on something like this when in live action. Anyways, from their side, like I think I can forgive them, because like AI is a hot thing at the moment, and it's marketing. Like if you're marketing a movie, you kind of want to like draw people in any way you can, like, even if it's like a bit of false advertising. I think that's kind of like what marketing is there for, to kind of like draw people in. But like I do agree with you, like the people, like one of the things I said at the top of this is that it just kind of like really scratches the surface with everything. It doesn't really go into in depth about anything at all, and like there isn't any real like themes or anything like that explored in this.
See, I would say it scratches a different surface. It doesn't even scratch the surface of the topic of AI. Do you know the story about the guy who walks on the street at night, and he comes by a guy standing under a street lamp, and he's kind of looking around. He says, "Hey, did you lose something?" And the guy says, "Yeah, I lost my keys." "Where did you lose them?" He points across the street over there. And so the guy asks, "But why are you here?" And the guy says, "Because the light's much better here."
Yeah.
I didn't tell that joke in the best way, because I was trying to remember it. But point is, it's not like it's doing the easy thing. It's doing the low effort thing, but it actually wants to be doing something else. But to do that, it has to do something that's more difficult and more work, and it requires more of the audience. And like a lot of things in marketing, I don't blame the company for trying. I blame the customer for buying it. That's kind of my big, like, I don't blame, like you said, the marketing department. Of course, they will make this look like AI, but people are buying it. That's my problem. And like they keep rewarding it, and it's just nonsense, and it's not true, and we just should reject it. It can still be a fun action spectacle, and I think it fails on that level by itself. But the pretense of saying this is about like a big serious topic is just an additional cherry on the cake.
The reason why, well, how I think about it is like people might like buy into it just because it seems like everyone's like waiting for AI to go wrong, or like waiting for like AI to like, do something a little bit more sinister. And I feel like anytime like they kind of like portray AI to kind of like betray its orders and like start to have its own mind and do its own thing, think like, oh, like this is where we're heading. It's like almost like doom mongering a little bit.
Yeah.
And you kind of like, I was going to say earlier, because like you mentioned about like the evil corporation. Like this is actually one of the movies where I actually don't even think that the corporation was like evil. Like Dillinger himself was evil, but like his mother was like obviously pushing him to like, get this like permanence code, or like, advance and like do better. But she kind of like saw it was going too far and like had to try and take control. Like the board was like, removing him from his seat because he was like kind of like going too far, and like his stuff was like kind of like running around there causing havoc and stuff like that. It's actually the one time where I don't think the corporation as a whole was bad. It was just like a bad character.
You're right that Julian Dillinger is the villain, right? And the company as a whole is kind of his instrument. And I actually kind of find it funny that the mom, Elizabeth, right? She doesn't seem to be the CEO. She seems to be maybe on the board or something. Like she's a senior person, but he's formally in charge. And she's just trying to run a company here, and he's playing supervillain. She keeps trying to get him to behave, and it gets her killed. I think that was kind of the one interesting thing, maybe. But I maybe would expect that to see in a superhero movie where somebody's trying to like run Lex. It's a bit like Austin Powers, right? Where number two just tries to run a company, and Dr. Evil keeps coming up with all of these plans. And number two keeps trying to point out to him about how just being a company in the 2000s is more profitable than being a supervillain, right? And you cannot even extort enough money from the United Nations to make it worth your while. You could just run some oil wells, whatever, or some factories, and it would make you more money. That actually was kind of one of the little nuggets that was kind of interesting, but it also doesn't go anywhere. It's not part of the story. It kind of happens like off to the side.
Which is a shame.
So to wrap this all up, any last words about Tron Ares?
File this with Rebel Moon. Missed opportunity to build a new. This one wouldn't have been new. Rebel Moon was completely new and completely garbage. This one was less garbage and less new, but it missed the opportunity to kind of modernize Tron Ares and bring it to a new audience, especially as someone that hadn't watched the originals, and it's kind of like my first exposure to the world. I can see the elements of it that would be interesting. I can see the elements of it that could work, and you could have a really interesting, compelling story and universe here, but they just failed to even get anywhere close to delivering that. They failed to give you anything really, apart from for me anyways, apart from the visuals. And even that, like after this conversation, it's a little bit sad that this is just kind of rehashed stuff that we had from the past. So it kind of loses points there as well. But no good characters, recycled visuals, no strong world building on either the real world or the virtual world at all. Like, I don't really feel like anything really advanced. I don't know. Like, I just don't feel like I've really got, I wouldn't say strong, because like I know what the world's about. There's just like something strongly missing in this to like really like grab me. And it's a shame because it would have been great, but where it's at the moment, and my expectations for anything that comes after would be extremely low. Even if there was anything that came afterwards, it wouldn't have the necessary filmmaking needed for the type of movie and for the type of story that it should probably be. So with that, I'll give it a 3 out of 10.
I think this fails on every level: character, plot, theme, world building, spectacle, all of it. Like, it recycles 40-year-old ideas and does them worse. I think it's pretty ugly overall. Just once you go over the initial wow factor of this looks kind of cool, there's not a lot there, and all the rest of the movie actually is quite ugly. This is just a complete waste of space and hot air. It should just have been anything else. Like, it's completely devoid of creativity or thought or effort. And for that reason, I give it a 5 out of 20.
All right, guys. I guess with that, we reach the end of today's episode. If you reach this part of the episode, as always, we appreciate you press and play. We appreciate you checking us out, giving us a listen. As always, if you enjoyed our discussion and you liked what you heard, you should probably tell a friend. And if you hated everything and you thought we were chatting a bunch of nonsense, you should probably tell an enemy. We are the Eye of the Storm podcast. See you later.
Bye-bye.